You can have a seat, Charles and Daniel. And thank you. That was really great. I'd like to introduce myself and our amazing collaborators. I'm Randall Packer, Creative Director of the Third Space Network, and I want to welcome you to our workshop performance of BlackWhite, a project of the Deep Third Space Performance Lab. BlackWhite was performed by Charles Lane tenor from his home studio in Los Angeles. Thank you, Charles. And
thank you, Randall and Greg and Daniel.
Yes, and then Daniel Sharon is a dancer choreographer, was performing from his home studio in Salt Lake City. And then this was a collaboration that also includes our designer and media artist Gregory Kuhn, who's been behind the scenes from his home studio in Philadelphia. And then finally, yours truly, Randall Packer from the Underground Studio Bunker here in Washington, D.C. I'd like to mention that BlackWhite is co-hosted by the Ririe-Woodbury Dance Company in Salt Lake City. A big thanks to them. Daniel Sharon is the artistic director. And so we're going to take questions from the audience, and I want to encourage everyone to ask lots of good questions. Put them in the Ask a Question pod at the bottom of your screen, and I will be fielding those questions as we move along here. So please, just anything you want to ask. This is your big chance. So I have actually a few things I wanted to ask Charles and Daniel, and so can you talk about the setups? Actually, if I can do this on the fly here, I'd like to have each of you talk about your setup and what it was like to perform from your living room, your studio at home. So I'm going to start with Daniel, and give me 1 second, Daniel, so I can remove your chroma key, and we can take a look at what's going on behind the scenes. So there's Daniel.
Oh, there we go. Can you hear me, Randall?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah, I mean, this is my living room. I'll just take my camera off. My camera is actually my iPhone. So we have an app on there, so we use that camera because it's really good quality. Let's see. So I have some monitors set up. So like there's a monitor there, so I can look stage left and see what's going on. There's a monitor here, so I can look sort of downstage and see what's going on. There's another monitor there, so 3 monitors. And then let's see, I have my green screen set up, like so, so Randall can do his magic, and some various lighting instruments, and a USB mic that I don't really use, except for rehearsals. So that's sort of the layout. It's been nice. I started out working at the studio and setting up there, but it's been nice to be at home, and different and good. The cats really like to be involved on the green screen floor. But it's actually a really nice space to perform, and I've never performed from here before, or from a setting like this, so it feels very comfortable and very warm. So, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you, Daniel. I'm going to see if I can adjust your settings a little bit here so we can get you more in sync. 1 second. Okay, that'll be better. So thank you, Daniel. And thank you for bringing your whole company into this and taking the big leap into the deep third space.
Anytime, Randall, anytime.
Oh, yeah. Famous last words. Okay. So I'm going to now switch over to Charles Lane, who's coming to you broadcasting from Los Angeles, right near the Disney Music Hall. Charles?
Yeah. Hi, Daniel. Randall.
Hi. Oh.
Hi.
I think are you stuck?
You look stuck to me.
I think you're
I don't know,
a little
can you
bit
hear me?
stuck. Let me see if I can unstick you here. 1 second.
So for all of you viewers out there, this happened all the time. So you're getting actually a really good example of sort of what it's like to work with the tech. It'll be going along. There he is. He's back. Yay. Anyway,
back.
that was a
He's
good
back.
example.
Yeah. No, it doesn't happen all the time. It only happened just now, right?
That's right, Rand.
So, what was your question again, Randall?
Well, give us a little glimpse of your studio, and I've got your chroma keys turned off, so you're exposed behind the scenes, and just
Okay.
tell us what it was like, to be performing in the virtual space from your living room, your studio room.
Frustrating from beginning to end. First of all, I had to acquire all of the equipment that's needed for this kind of a broadcast, and thanks to Randall and his group, we were provided with special lighting equipment and iPhone stands and monitors and cords and Ethernet cables and all sorts of things that we ended up needing to produce this, as well as the green screen behind me, to produce this performance in my studio, which is a tight space. And every time we had to rehearse, I had to move furniture out of the room and set up the studio lights. So it's been a challenge, but I've also learned a great deal, and I'm thankful for this opportunity to experiment and try something different, which I don't often get a chance to do because mostly I work in legitimate theater and opera theaters. I work for the Los Angeles Opera Company and the Los Angeles Master Chorale, which is a professional choir in Los Angeles that sings at Walt Disney Concert Hall with the LA Philharmonic. And so all of the work that I am usually doing is live and in front of a public. So taking on this challenge to work with so much technology and having to be dependent on so many tiny details, it's been frustrating at sometimes and a learning curve and educational in others.
Yeah, so I think what's interesting is that the two of you have actually never met each other in person. And you created this piece together, and really the two of you really drove the narrative. I give you all the full credit for the piece itself. But what was it like working together and having to establish a relationship between the two of you by doing it online and doing it without having, the benefit of having met one another in the real world?
Well, I'll start, Daniel. I think at first it was, well, first of all, I mean, Daniel is such a charming and nice and talented human being that there was no issue in terms of connecting with him on that level. But once we started diving into the material and trying to figure out, I think for Daniel it was a matter of trying to figure out how to, how to speak about certain issues and certain topics that we're dealing with here, like social justice and race and class and all of that stuff. And so we, little by little, step by step, experimented and played around with just, first of all, connecting with each other, not being in the same space. It's much easier when you have someone standing next to you. You can see them and touch them and go out with them and have conversations with them outside of work. But we didn't have any of those advantages. And so little by little, we just kind of dissected what was needed for each of us to feel like we had an equal part in the process and in the performance and in the content.
Yeah.
Daniel?
Yeah, I mean, when I started, I didn't know Charles, as we've mentioned, but it really, I started and I felt like I saw eye to eye with him as a performer. It's something that I used to do a lot of as a dancer, and I don't really perform too much anymore. And so when Randall brought us together, it was such a great opportunity to connect with Charles as a performer. And I just had such a great, he offered so much to the process in terms of his point of view around events that were happening in LA after the murder of George Floyd, his perspective as an opera singer, as a man, as a black man. It was just amazing. It was nice when the technology could get out of the way. And so, like, it was so great to be in this space working with Randall and Greg, but Charles and I had some Zoom sessions one-on-one. And it was really nice because we could connect and we could fool around and we could talk about each other a little bit more, our personal lives. And I think through driving that connection, I think it really helped once we sort of flushed out this project a little bit more. So yeah, it's been we had to get to know each other. I feel like we have different ways of working. And so I think that was something that we had to kind of get used to each other. I think Charles is very intellectual, he's very thoughtful, and I feel like I'm very spontaneous and go a little bit more by like feeling and instinct and sensation. And so I think the coming together of that was really important. But yeah, it was really rewarding to share the space with him for this project, for sure.
Yeah, thank you. And then I'd like to bring in Greg, who is has been instrumental in this project, and Greg and I have been working together for a very long time. And Greg works in the physical theater and installation for many years as sound engineer, production manager, and multimedia designer. And so, Greg, I'd like to just ask you, what's it like for you personally to make this transition to the virtual stage? Is it Greg? Are you there? Uh-oh. I guess, oh no, we've lost Greg. I don't know what happened here. But
you can answer for him, Randall.
Yeah, maybe Greg, you could put your answer in the chat. So I'd like to take we've got several questions from the audience.
I have to backtrack a little bit and
just there
thank Randall, Daniel, and Charles. I'm here.
Oh, okay.
I'm here.
Okay, great.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Hello?
Yeah, we hear you, Greg. I wonder if he's not hearing us. Oh, well. I don't know what happened. What happened with the sound on his end? But, Greg, just put...
Am I audible?
Yeah, you are. But you can't hear me.
Okay, great. Well, first I have to thank Charles, Daniel, and Randall. I've appreciated the artistic perspectives arriving together. Okay, so I'll leave it at that. Thank you all.
Okay, all right. So I'm going to take some questions from the audience. This is a question by a person without a name. Oh, no. This is from I. Fuji Nelson. So what were the prompts for your improvisation?
Well, the songs, I think, was the initial prompts for the improvisations. Originally, we had... Well, let me just take a little second just to tell part of my process in this production, and that is that usually I am absorbing material from as many sources as I can possibly do. And it just happened that when we were starting to work on this piece, that I was working on a production with the LA Opera on a piece by Igor Stravinsky, Oedipus Rex. And there were elements of that piece that influenced my creative decisions in this piece. First of all, it came with narration. Oedipus Rex has narration written by Jean Cocteau. And the second thing was that it was in 3 sections. So I thought, well, I'll just use that template and come up with 3 different songs, and each song would represent a different movement, and then create a narration that went before each of the 3 scenes. So I started with Nina Simone song that I know and love and have done many times. I wish I knew how it would feel to be free. That was the first song. The second song was just a melody, a tune from Oedipus Rex, which is based on the Greek word trivium, which means crossroads. And then the third section, which we didn't actually hear the music for, but it was the Bill Withers song, Lean on Me. So those were the sort of initial inspirations for me in the process. And then from there, I shared those songs with Randall and Daniel and Greg. And then Daniel and I played with the whole idea of the song. We experimented with the possibility of Daniel also singing some of the text. And then Daniel had this brilliant idea of just taking words from the song and having that sort of dictate some of the movement. And so that's how that all began.
Yeah, and I also want to mention that Charles had the idea for sharing one another's neighborhoods. And that was a really important element of the piece. What you saw in the beginning when Charles comes out was Charles's neighborhood, which is downtown LA, and you saw the Calder sculpture, which is right next to where he lives near the music center in downtown LA. And then Daniel lives in a more suburban area, and you saw the tree-lined streets and so on. So there was a definite contrast between the urban and suburban neighborhoods that we wanted to use as an element for them to get to know each other by sharing neighborhoods. Daniel, do you want to speak to that idea?
Yeah, I was going to mention the neighborhoods also. It became such a big part of it, and talking about how neighbors, or neighborhoods can keep people in, they can keep people out, and there's so many ways to look at neighborhoods. And so that was an important element. And I, Fuji, to talk a little bit more, like for instance, in the neighborhood scenes at the beginning, it was really the use of like a choreographic or an improvisational tool, a room read, or read the space around you. So it was just a very simple prompting. And so as Charles and I took in our scenery or each other's scenery, we try to just sort of embody that a little bit in our spaces. So I would say there was some material that was a little bit more set and codified, and then some improvisational structures along the way also.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was fun.
So there's another question here from Annie Abrahams. Thank you, Annie, for coming, because I know she's in Montpellier, France, and it's 6 hours later there. But Annie's asking where the BlackWhite title comes from. And that was a long discussion that we had about that. And I have to take the credit or the blame for the title, as it were. But what I thought was very interesting was to set up a situation in which we're really focusing on the polarity between black and white, which has been a huge issue, particularly in the past year and a half, in the past year since George Floyd was murdered. And we wanted to address that as a motif by not only having 2 performers, one black, one white, but also using the masking technique of the white mask for Charles and the black mask for Daniel. And so it was really a way of sort of building this opportunity for a reconciliation, but not necessarily between Daniel and Charles, but I think in the larger sense of the need for black and white to not be such a contrast, to not be so separate, but rather to be something that we can all just, I don't know what the right word for this is, but not judging one another by the color of our skin. And that's a big, huge leap for our society, and it has been for hundreds of years. Charles, do you want to speak to that?
I would just like to add to that. Yeah, I would just like to say that the whole idea of black and white is a construct, And it was a construct, I think, that was began by white supremacists. I would just say that, because in order to kind of justify the abuse of Africans in this country who came to this country and were made into slaves, there had to be some dehumanization in order to justify the treatment. And so, of course, you know, whenever we see this kind of dehumanization going on, it's one side has to be the negative, right? So that's why we had this construct of black being negative. There are many examples of how we use the word black in a kind of negative way. And the opposite, white, being pure and holy and all of these other very positive images. So the idea of people being black or white, the fact that I can say that I'm black is a total construct. You know, if I were living in Africa, there wouldn't be any need to call me black, right? Because the whole country or various countries in Africa are filled with black people. But in the United States, and I think in the world right now, that is the construct that we live with. And so I think in this piece, we were trying to make the question that, you know, how necessary are those divisions? You know, how important is it to maintain this idea of separates, of one being black, the other being white? And why is it not possible for us to be Americans, as it were?
Yeah, it's a huge question, and I think that it's really it becomes the focus of that moment in the video from a Black Lives Matter protest, in which a black man is pleading to the police to kneel and to join hands, and I think that is a kind of reenactment of this issue that we're talking about, which is coming together of black and white. And obviously in other countries it may not be an issue, but here it is a big issue, and I found that very moving, that scene from a Black Lives Matter rally in which the policeman knelt, and it was just a moment of catharsis. You know, it's what Charles was saying in his quote about how can we have justice without love, and I felt that that's an act of love to embrace like that, and that's really what the piece is about. That's really what we're aiming for in this project, is to achieve a kind of embrace of one another, and to get to know each other, to get to know each other's neighborhoods and lives and the meaning of all of that. And so I think there aren't too many questions from our dance company. I don't know exactly. Maybe they're a bit shy. I don't know, but
I encourage them.
yeah, right. But I think I would just like to say also that the process. There was a question from Annie about the process, and it's a very difficult process. And we were trying to push the envelope on the technology. We're using almost nothing here is off-the-shelf technology. We're using a lot of different ways of achieving a video connection. The audio connection was with a software called Sonobus. The video is with Live to Air. I'm using Ableton Live here in the studio for music. I'm using VDMX for video. And I'm using Maxim SP for titles. And it's a real conglomeration of software that has been, and hardware that has been brought together to see how far we can take this medium and try to do things that aren't necessarily being done. And it's not always a pleasant process. It takes nerves of steel to deal with all of this, but for me, it's really exciting to see two performers like Charles and Daniel really put themselves out and try to make this thing happen with all this technology, which just inevitably gets in the way, but then it also can free us up to do things that are new. And so I'd just like to thank the both of you, And I'd like to give the rest of my thank yous, and then we can call it a day. I know everybody's exhausted.
Can I just add
Yeah.
one other thing, Randall, before we close?
Yeah,
I
Charles.
just want to say how because being inside of my apartment in downtown LA and in my studio and being surrounded by all this technology and monitors and all of that stuff, it was hard to get a sense of theater at the beginning, but eventually through the process, there were I would say through the entire performance, for me anyway, I completely forgot that I was in my apartment studio, and it really did feel like Daniel and I shared the same stage, and that was like that was a remarkable and rewarding feeling and experience for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree, totally. And it really just happened in the last day or two when we were able to
Yeah.
just keep running it and
Yeah.
like diving into the third space. And I had to picture you next to me, like I really had you in this space with me, and it felt like a
Yeah.
little bit of a like alternate reality a little bit, which was really awesome.
Yeah.
I want to say one more thing too, Randall. Can I say one more thing?
Yes, absolutely.
One thing that resonated, Charles said this once during the process, and it just Charles said this. Charles said this during the process, and it just resonated so much, and it's a huge like takeaway for me, is that we all came together, the four of us, to make something together, and that is a collaboration of four people coming together. And one day Charles pointed out that Black Lives Matter is a collaboration, coming together in a society and agreeing on a set of principles and laws and the way to live with each other. That's collaboration. And so how we move through this life really mirrors how we move through this process of getting to know each other, collaborating with each other, compromising, and all that. So that was a huge takeaway actually for me from this project. So
Yeah.
Charles, maybe we'll meet one day.
I'm sure you
Yes.
will. And one thing
sure.
that the three of us have in common is that we all went to school at Cal Arts. And
Yes.
I met Charles at Cal Arts, and I won't say how many years ago, but we
Yeah.
met at Cal Arts. And Daniel actually was a student of mine at Cal Arts about 10 years ago when we were working on some similar ideas as what we're doing right now. So, anyway, thank you guys so much. And I'd like to again thank the Ririe-Woodbury Dance Company and Tori Duhame, who's their marketing and PR person. And the company provided some wonderful dance footage from the Autumn Sun piece that was choreographed and created by Daniel Sharon. And the dancers were Megan McCarthy, Bashan Williams, Corrine Lohner, Fausto Rivera, and Dominica Green. So thank you all. You guys were also great, magnificent performers. And of course, I'd like to thank the Third Space Network team, which also includes, besides myself, as creative director, Sean Blinn, who's been in the chat, keeping everybody active there, our designer, Beverly, and our software developer, Wei Wen. Both of them are in Singapore, and they are amazing. And also, of course, Gregory Kuhn, our resident multimedia designer, and Sam Levine, who's our post-production manager. And actually, Sam edited that piece of the Black Lives Matter rally. So thank you, Sam. And of course, my partner in crime and our artistic advisor, Richard Dana. And just one last thing is that, if I can find it here. So also I want to thank the DC Commission on the Arts and Humanities for their support, Crowdcast, which you've been watching this broadcast from. They supported us because of our activist work. The University of Brighton School of Arts and the UK Arts and Humanities Research Council, who we've been working with, and all the wonderful friends of the Third Space Network. So thank you both. Thank you, Charles and Daniel. Thank you, Greg, and thanks everybody. And we did it. Okay, it's all over. All right, take care, everybody, and I'm signing off.